over that really quickly?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
March 28th, I'm inviting everybody and doing something.
Ah, that's great.
No, I know where that came from. Whoops.
I hope it puts all right. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. How are you? Good, good.
Which I've never been compared to at either one of those. I was hoping you'd say cost-benefit analysis.
Well,
Whatever. Yes. Relax. Meeting come to order, please. First, we'll have the approval of the minutes from January 30th.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Second.
All those in
Mr.
favor?
Hunt seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, now we are going to have a report by Mr. Edward Donahue from Municipal and Financial Services.
Madam Chair, if I could just have a point of order.
Yes.
There's information that people would want to know. I'm sorry. Mr. Rimkunis is usually here, as you guys all know, and I just wanted to let people know he has fallen ill, and to please keep him in your thoughts and prayers today. He is at every single meeting, and he is not here today.
Thank
And
you, Tina.
I just want to let you guys know.
Okay.
He's in the hospital.
Mr. Donahue?
Good evening. My name's Ed Donahue. I'm the president of the Municipal and Financial Services Group. My colleague Mike Maker is with me. Mike was the manager on this study. We were engaged by the Water Pollution Control Authority several months ago to do a financial and management review. We're not engineers, we're not attorneys. We know just enough about those subjects to get you in trouble. So bear with us. We'd like to talk. We have a presentation that should take 20 minutes or less. Please jump right in with questions as we go through it. We want to talk about the scope of what we did and the approach we took to the study, and then what our findings and recommendations are for each of the major areas of the study. On page 2 is the scope to look at the governance and organizational operations of the WPCA. It's on slide 3 in your booklet. And I'm not going to read all this. I won't insult you by reading just repeating back the words that are there. And then to look at the reimbursement to the town for services provided by the town. And the third is to look at a long-term financial plan and rate study. And we took the classic kind of approach that you take to a management study. You do your preliminary investigations, you dig up data, you gather earlier reports, things like that. Then you come on site and you talk to some people and you do some nosing around. And then you look at the various functions that are involved, and then you write a report. And so that in 30 seconds is what's gone on in the project. Mike is going to walk you through the findings and recommendations for each phase. And we double team one another, so I may jump in and interpose myself. But I have two comments to make up front. One is that someone on this board violated their duty on their responsibility by circulating the report. The report was marked as a confidential attorney kind of product, and it has come to my attention that copies were distributed by someone outside the board. It was intended for the board's outside attorney and the board members, so somebody violated that responsibility, and that's not to be taken lightly. And the second thing is we need to make some changes to parts of the report because we learned that the organization chart and some of the job descriptions we were given have been superseded and are outdated, so we take full responsibility for that. The information we obtained was not the most current information, so we need to tweak some of that. In particular, the organization chart that's shown in the report is not the most recent one. So those are two caveats I want to preface our presentation with. Mike?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, as Ed mentioned, there was 3 main scope of service items. The first has been broken down into governance and then organizational, just because there's several items for that one. And so my process is going to be first findings and then recommendations for each of these. So for governance, some of the findings, of course, as you know, there's a 10-member town council who also serves as the WPCA board, and we think that's troublesome for several reasons. When you are both the council and the board, it's not real clear which hat you're wearing at which time, if you're representing the council or the board. WPCAs were set up to be an independent structure, so that focuses strictly on the wastewater organization. And when you have many other things to focus on, that makes it difficult to just focus on wastewater. It's a bit distracting. Also, I understand that the council and the board are both subject to replacement every 2 years, given the election cycle. We think that's also troubling, because that you're going to lose a lot of institutional knowledge when everyone possibly could be replaced every 2 years. That may not always be the case, but that is an issue. The second bullet, current operational approach makes it difficult and inefficient for the board to carry out its responsibilities. Right now, it's not real clear what type of authority the board has over the wastewater enterprise. Is it operational? Is it advisory? So that really needs to be clear. I know in the charter it states that the superintendent reports to the Department of Public Works director, and I don't know if that should be actually reporting to the WPCA board or if it's working well the way it is now. But there's no real formal or informal orientation process, it sounds like, for the WPCA board. It's just a kind of a common sense thing to do when you come on as a new member. You should kind of get a tour of the plant, some of the major pumping stations, things like that. An orientation process, a description of the expenses, revenues, things like that. So, and we noticed that WPCA does not have a strategic plan, which can really help steer the ship and guide you in the right direction in the future. So that would be another recommendation. So some of the recommendations we have on governance, establish qualifications for membership of the board. Right now you have an even number. 10 is a bit cumbersome. We would probably suggest a separate board, odd number, maybe 5 or 7 members. We did look at some other Connecticut WPCAs in the state. We looked at about 18 of them, and roughly half of those have 5 members. This is a non-scientific analysis we did, just looking at some other WPCAs. 4 had 7, so the majority had 5 or 7 members, and we think that's a good number to get quorum. We think they should be non-salaried. It should not be a paid position. Certainly should cover expenses if you're going to a conference or going to learn about the industry, but it should not be a paid position. It should be a formal nominating confirmation process. It should be representation of various constituencies. Maybe you want to have an engineer on the board, some environmental folks, some homeowners, someone representing the business community, people of that nature, kind of a diverse cross-section of the town. We think there probably should not be any elected officials. It should be, of the people. Staggered terms, I think, makes sense. A 3 or 4 year staggered term with a term limit. So maybe if you were to have, say, 5 members, if there were 3 year staggered terms, you'd have maybe 2, 2, and 1, something like that. So, again, adopt some policy clarifying the operational authority and responsibility of the board. Establish a formal orientation process to provide knowledge and our responsibilities of the board, and develop a strategic plan. these are some of the best practices that other utilities are doing.
We realize, of course, we're not saying all this, but this would take legislative action by the council in order to affect some of these changes. You couldn't just go and do them because some of these things would change what is written in your charter, and we also have to make sure we comply with state law.
Madam Chairman? Madam Chairman, would it be appropriate for questions to be raised for each section? We've just finished the governance recommendations, and I do have
Yes.
a couple of questions.
Yes.
And then we can
Move on.
move on
Right.
to the various sections.
Yes.
What would be your recommendation on how these people would be appointed?
Well, it varies all over the place, but what seems to be similar, or what seems to be common in Connecticut, because I think there are about 100 WPCAs in total in Connecticut, plus or minus, is that in many of the WPCAs, the board of the WPCA nominates people to fill upcoming vacant terms, and then the council confirms them. So you can't be self-perpetuating by yourself. You need the concurrence of an outside body. And if you were to write regulations or qualifications, obviously that would also take legislative action. If you said you want an engineer, an attorney, a finance person, an environmentalist, or whatever on the board, that would probably take, I'm not a lawyer, but I suspect that would need legislative action.
And last question on that subject. Do any of these other WPCAs around the state elect the board members through a general election?
Not that I'm aware of.
So they're all appointed and confirmed by the governing body?
They're either nominated by the WPCA and confirmed by the council, or they're nominated by the council and confirmed by the mayor, but there are always some outside checks and balances.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Tina?
When you mention the board that would be created in 5 people,
Or 7, or whatever.
or whatever it is, the engineer, the finance person, would you suggest those are town employees?
No.
Okay, so these would be people with
Citizens.
expertise that are not.
You want citizens.
Okay, so citizens
Well, I'm
with
not to suggest the town employees are not citizens, but I mean, you want people who are not employees.
non-employees. Okay, thanks.
Ms. DePonte?
So, with respect to the board, if there's no remuneration and you're expecting people to make commitments of 4 years or so, I guess I have 2 concerns. One is that it would be great if people had certain skills that were very conducive for the oversight that a board would need. If they, and I wonder, I mean, we have a lot of talented people in town, but, so I have 2 questions. One is, do other WPCA boards, is there remuneration for them?
No, usually.
No, they're usually all volunteers.
They're usually all volunteers in Connecticut. We put that in there because in some states like New Jersey, people get paid $10,000 or $20,000 for showing up for an hour a month for a meeting, and it becomes a political payola thing.
Yes.
And you don't
Okay.
want that.
I
And then
just
my
want to make
second
one
question-
comment. The WPCA in New Haven gets $6,000 a year each.
Okay. And then the second question I had is, must they live in town?
That's up to you.
Okay.
You'd
Okay.
have to specify that either in your legislation or your rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Mitzi?
Okay. Scott?
Just a quick question. Good evening. Can you tell me, are there any other WPCA boards in Connecticut that are also the town council or the city council?
I'm not aware of any. There's some that have some elected officials on, but I'm not aware of any others that are completely elected officials.
I mean, we don't know every WPCA board in Connecticut. I know the state legislation allows that, so I assume there probably are some.
Okay. Thank you.
Greg?
Thank you, Chair. Gentlemen, as you're going through the report, I wanted your ideas on what I'll call a project timeline, that some of the items maybe we can begin addressing immediately, and some other items will take a period of evaluation in order to achieve. So as as you're going through the presentation, maybe reorientating the board as you've described in these first few bullet points. That could take a while, legislative, legal, et cetera. But if there's some things that you think are easy wins, maybe developing a strategic plan is something that we should be able to quickly achieve. That feedback would be
We
appreciated.
will do that, absolutely.
All right, let's let him continue with the next points, and if you find they fit in, Greg, yes, I know what you're talking about.
So I think we're on slide 7 now, organizational analysis findings. This is something that, this is not unique to your utility or Connecticut. This is a nationwide thing where the wastewater industry is aging. There's a retirement tsunami, as they're calling it. A lot of baby boomers are retiring, and that just happens to be what a lot of utility workers are. So this is nothing unique to you, but that's something you want to do is start preparing for these retirements with mentoring and training and some sort of succession planning for replacement of management and supervision. Another one that was mentioned here, there was a 5-person sewer crew that was transferred from WPCA to the Highway Division, and we understand that was because the EPA would not allow enterprise funding to pay for general fund activities. We understand there's a chargeback system where they're essentially a contracted entity from the Highway Division for any work that's done for WPCA. That may be fine. We think it's probably more efficient operationally, especially for the superintendent and his oversight, to be in charge of those employees if they were under the WPCA. This bullet on the organizational chart submitted to EPA may be inaccurate, and I think that we have now found out that is inaccurate. Several years ago, there was an EPA report that was sent and had this org chart that showed the superintendent having only underneath him 2 employees, and everybody else was then under the highway department. And we understand whenever that was drawn up, the lines were either created incorrectly or there's some sort of misinformation, and that is inaccurate. I guess a revised one was sent to the EPA, which we just recently obtained, and so we will address that in the final report. Job descriptions, some of them appear to be out of date and inconsistent with each other. There's some mention of some positions in those that don't currently exist. Some positions reporting to an assistant superintendent, which does not appear to exist. A control chemist, who's no longer existing. So we would recommend, hiring some sort of firm to do a job description report as well as a salary survey, because utility employees, water and sewer utility employees, are not the same animal as public works employees. They have special licensing requirements, liability, if they were to make an error that is on them. So we feel there should be a separate analysis to look at the actual class, salaries, and grades that they have. So I covered the recommendations there as well. Develop a succession plan. That's another thing I guess you could do the near term, or at least start working on one. As I mentioned above, so the 5-person sewer crew was moved over, and some other changes, of course, you've known have happened. The superintendent has retired, since been replaced. The process control supervisor has retired and now come back as a contract employee. The secretary retired, a new secretary has been hired. So there just seemed to be a lot of movement for an enterprise fund that only consists of 16 personnel. 4 or 5 had left at around the same time. So we would simply say, kind of look at the root cause of that movement to see, what happened here and how can we avoid that in the future, and that may be in line with some of the succession planning.
The other thing, we don't want to suggesting things that need adjustment or tweaking. We don't want to suggest that the WPCA is not doing its job. The treatment plant is working. It's got people that do a good job with the tools they have. Maybe they should have some more tools, but they're doing a good job. You've got a dedicated workforce, so I don't want anybody to go away from this meeting with the suggestion or innuendo that we're criticizing the operation of the plant, because we're not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
are we done with this operational analysis? Okay. Just 2 questions. In your study, did you come up with any reasons or root causes for the exodus?
No, part of it was probably personal agendas for some people. Part of it was just age. So, you know,
Okay.
people have all kinds of reasons for leaving. I'm not trying to suggest that there's bad management or anything like that.
Okay.
We didn't find any evidence of that.
Thank you. And my second question is, did you determine, it's always been unclear to me what the proper staffing level should be at all levels, management, right down.
You had a study done by a competent firm several years ago that indicated you needed more staffing than you have.
And you concur with those findings?
We're not engineers, but the staffing they suggested looked to be pretty typical and appropriate for an operation of this size.
And I haven't seen that report. Do you know what their recommendation was?
At the time, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, it was about 25 employees you had at the time. And I think they suggested about 27 at the time, so. You
And
now
what
it's
is our-
16.
Right.
Was
And our
Earth
current
Tech-
staffing
Earth-
level is
Earth-
at 16 now?
We have 16 now, with the 5-person crew moving out, so if you had those, it'd be 21.
That was a report done by Earth Tech,
Got it.
big engineering firm.
Thank you, Madam.
If you look on page 18, you'll see what the staffing was back in 2005. We had 23 employees, and in 2016, it's 16.
Chart.
Alan?
Yeah, one of the questions I have is, again, kind of just getting into the root cause of the exodus. And Tom, I need you to help out with this, but I remembered at one of our meetings, you had mentioned that I think 4 or 5 people had left over 1 month's time, and you had said that there was actually improvement after those departures. So I was just wondering where that month kind of fit into the analysis that was done by the consultant.
Could you use the mic, please?
Thanks, Tom.
How could I forget? I can't say that it was over a month period. It was over a brief period of time. Yeah, the superintendent retired, his secretary retired, or she left voluntarily. Our crew leader, first shift crew leader, retired. He had 35 years in. Process control supervisor retired because rumors have it that the insurance for the retired was going to be diminished, and she took the opportunity to get out beforehand. One individual was looking for more opportunity, and he moved to Brantford, and another fellow took an opportunity in New Haven. A lot of the people there were being encouraged to depart. There was an opening in New Hartford, which Pete encouraged me to take a good look at. Bill, our number 1 operator on the day shift, our roving operator, was offered a position up in Hartford at close to $10 an hour, maybe $12 an hour higher pay, and Pete was strongly encouraging him to leave out. There was some motive that I don't want to guess. I don't know what other people are thinking, that we were encouraging people rather than to leave, rather than to develop people within and to end up with a succession plan. That answer the question?
For the most part. So, Mr. Donahue, where did sort of this departure of people fit in while you were doing your analysis of the staff?
Well, it all sort of happened right in the middle of it.
Oh, fantastic. So really I don't mean to say it in a good way, but in a sense, the timing of this and you guys being here is kind of a good thing.
We kicked off the study, and then the superintendent left maybe a week or 2 later. So,
Okay.
And so we didn't have the opportunity to talk to some of the people who left.
So there's knowledge missing.
Yeah.
Tina?
I have a question of how this is handled at other WPCAs with regards to the last bullet point on the analysis. The public works employees, licensed wastewater operators should not be in the same grade, salary, or classification. One piece is that they're being used by highway, right? So there are actual, and I know a couple that are actual sewer, wastewater qualified people that are out doing highway work sometimes. The other piece of this, so how do we fix that? Can we do that? Or how do we get rid of that? And then, or should we? And then the second part of it is many of these public works employees moved up through the ranks. So maybe when they were 17 years old, 18 years old, they started, as cutting grass somewhere, and then they went back to school, they got, their CDLs, they moved up through, and then moved up into the wastewater treatment plant. And that's what traditionally, I think, way in the back, that's what used to happen. So how do you suggest that the employees be completely separated from that? Or what are you suggesting?
Not necessarily. We're not HR specialists, okay? And that's why we suggested you have somebody who is expert in that area. Figure out, if you decide, for instance, to keep that 5-person crew where it is, how do you structure a job description and compensation to reflect the fact that some of them have certain kind of training and may have licensing above and beyond what other public works people have to have. That's the challenge when you're in a small organization and you have somebody wearing more than one hat. How do you compensate them? How do you classify them?
So my follow-up question, hang on just a minute, is are there people that are in the world, I know there are people who go to school and get college degrees to be in charge of the wastewater facilities. Mm-hmm. Are there people that are there programs where people are coming out directly to be the workers at the plant in the different positions that are there?
Yes, every state has a series of programs. You could probably find a bunch of community colleges or two-year colleges that have specialized training programs. I know the state of Maryland has a program. They actually got some money from DOD to take veterans and train them to be wastewater operators.
So to do everything at the plant that we currently have, those programs exist, or
they do exist.
Just go for that?
They do exist. I'm not familiar with which institutions, and Tom, you may know in Connecticut what community colleges or what organizations offer courses like that.
Gateway currently has a program.
So our folks would, if we went away from what is the current practice, the majority of our people would come probably out of the Gateway program or surrounding area college programs, and they would be able to hold all the positions that our current people have and to be qualified?
They may be associate degrees, not bachelor's degrees.
At the same salary levels and all of that you saw?
That's why you need somebody who really understands local compensation practices and state compensation law in Connecticut, and we don't pretend to understand.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. On the staffing, you mentioned that there is a 5-person crew leader, 2 WPCA line maintainers, and 2 WPCA laborers that were moved to the highway division. I was of the impression there were just 2 people, not 5.
It's 5.
Maybe Tom could.
It is 5.
Maybe 5.
Was it initially 2?
Was before my time.
Okay.
We're fairly certain it was 5.
Unless they're referring to they're doing other work, so maybe it's the equivalent of 2 full-time equivalents, I don't know, but number of bodies was 5.
It is 5.
I'm going to move on to slide 9. This is the reimbursement of general fund findings. So the town does provide budgeted versus actual expenses and revenues in a monthly report. This is extracted from Eunice. I've seen it on the town's website. But I think it could go further than that and actually put it into context and maybe give you some financial statements on a monthly or quarterly basis so that the WPCA can actually understand, these numbers. Why is this budgeted at 120%, or why is the actual, half of that? But I do commend them on providing some monthly data, but I think it could go a little bit further, and there could be a little more education to the WPCA board on the financials, expenses, and revenues.
You are an enterprise fund, which means, based on accounting rules and regulations, you have to have your own income statement and balance sheet, and you should be presented those regularly. And we spoke with the finance director, and he's more than amenable to running a CRAM program on municipal accounting so people can understand these things, because if you're out in the real world, accounting is different than it is in a municipality, and so it's a specialized version of accounting. And part of the orientation process for new members on the board should be an understanding, giving them an understanding of how to interpret and understand those financial statements and getting regular briefings from the finance director.
A regular report would be, finance report would be very welcome by this group, I can tell you that.
So we were asked to look at several expenses, revenues, cash balances, things of those nature from the board. And I think you'll see in the report each of those is highlighted, but we did mention in some of them that we are getting some further information, and we have received some of that, so we'll incorporate that into the final report. There's the cost allocation analysis. There's a section in the report on that. I don't know that a formal cost allocation study has been done by an independent, contractor or consultant. I know there's some internal documents floating around. Ed spoke with the former finance director, and she had mentioned she had some basis for some of those numbers. I don't know we actually saw that, but we did see an alternative analysis that does show a justification for some of the expenses that the WPCA is being charged back from the general fund. But we would recommend a formal cost allocation study be done. One item in particular that's of contention is this land use expense. It's just a lease of the land under the plant. We have not been provided any information on a basis for that or how that was developed. So we would recommend doing away with that and then just solely basing.
However, that's a double-edged sword. We really suggest you go through the exercise of a formal, allocation plan so that based on what we've been shown, WPCA is treated consistently with any other program or department, but we don't know what the basis is or how that allocation was developed, and you really should look at that. But based on what we've seen, if you use the plan consistently that the town uses for everybody, you are being underbilled. So we would suggest getting rid of that $600,000, but you may be underbilled. So the net result may be a higher cost allocation from the town's general fund.
I'd like to comment on that because you referred several times to the CAO's letter called Summary Allocation for WPCA and EMS. At the time he presented this, I called to his attention that he was inaccurate as far as the WPCA was concerned, because he said that the town provided benefits, and he went through a whole list of things that in actuality we provide through our sewer fees. So his letter to you was inaccurate, and he should have known that because I told him that right away.
Madam Chairman, you certainly provide the benefits, and the sewer fees provide revenues to pay those things. But I don't know that those benefit costs are all included explicitly in your budget. Some of them may be buried in the town budget, and they're trying to transfer your share of them back to you. We've seen some worksheets. We haven't seen a comprehensive, plan or allocation thing.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
good time for questions at the end of the section. Hey, gentlemen, in regards to what we'll call cost accounting or in-kind allocation of in-kind services, I know that Jay, our finance director, and the chief administrative officer are working to standardize that and come up with a more rational allocation to ensure that whether it's employee benefits or it's resources used in the central offices and that need to be allocated back to the WPCA and other town departments. So when we get our budget release in a couple of weeks, we should see a more precise allocation of those services. We may disagree on some of the nuances of it, but it'll be standardized across the town's enterprise funds, including EMS and Short Beach.
I think that would solve some of your unease.
Yes.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Just one question on this section. Remove the land use rent charge. You're not arguing that the town doesn't own this property?
Oh, no, not at all.
I got the deed right here.
I don't
shows.
dispute that the town owns it, but the assertions we've heard, and again, we have no basis for it, for the statement, but also I asked the former finance director about this. The former superintendent said that the sewer fees paid directly for the land, 100 years ago or whenever it was bought. It wasn't purchased with town general fund monies. And the former finance director said she had worksheets to explain the basis for all the overhead allocations. She said the one thing she could not have she did not have a basis for was the $600,000 land lease. And she said she wasn't suggesting it was wrong or that it was right, but she said she didn't have the basis for that.
And it's only been in place for a few years now, so it didn't
Yeah.
exist, and then it all of a sudden...
Actually, thank you, that was my second. Do you know when the town actually started charging rent to the WPCA?
It might be in there in that section. It was, a few years ago.
Tina, do you know?
I believe it was with the new mayor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they just started?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Greg?
Yeah, just to,
Greg?
so we see in the current WPCA operating budget a number of items, whether it's transfer to general fund or land use. And these were discrete efforts to move money from the WPCA income over to the general fund to compensate the town for those in-kind services, that portion of town hall that is used to support. So we may not see, we probably won't see land use fee, but we'll see other discrete transfers, such as a % of town engineer's time or a % of the tax assessor's office, because they do process the WPCA.
Percentage of accounting and budgeting time or
Correct.
data processing.
So
or-
there's some obsolete or less direct things like land use, which will be gone and replaced by more precise measures of
Right.
cost
And
accounting.
you may want to use a different allocable base depending on the rational nexus for each one. Maybe use square footage for facilities maintenance, or use, budget versus employees. It may, depending on the department, it may use a different basis.
That's true, and they're very active in coming up with those measures right now.
Madam Chair?
Tina?
Two things. First thing is, when that is put through, there are a number of enterprise funds that are charged that same fee, and I really think it has to be universal,
gonna
and
be
whether
standardized, Tina.
and proportionate, whether an algorithm, whatever that algorithm is. The other piece is I'd like to know if in your findings you saw any, I know everyone's hooked up to the stormwater sewers, but there are a number of people on septic tanks throughout our town. Those folks are hooked up to our stormwater sewers, but when we were going to be sold, they had received bills, right? And then it was, okay, then we don't bill them. Did you see any inefficiencies with that, or is any of this kind of stuff, like, I guess, cost offsetting that? Is that why it's coming from the town side? So basically, the town side's covering that piece?
The WPCA's fees are to cover services provided by WPCA. So if those parcels are not receiving wastewater services from the WPCA, they don't pay the WPCA. I believe the storm sewer costs are in the general fund.
Okay,
So they would pay for that through their property taxes or whatever.
got it. Thank you.
Now, throw a wrench in that, one thing that's becoming quite common are stormwater utilities, and actually making stormwater an enterprise fund so it pays its own way. But that's for another time.
That's for another time. That's to, if you've got, and I don't think it's an issue here, if you had a high percentage of your real estate that was owned by the state or feds and not paying taxes, they would be escaping the storm sewer costs.
So
That's a different
let me
issue.
follow up. We have a plethora of applications for development
Right.
that are happening, affordable housing developments, luxury housing developments, as a matter. Would that be something on the horizon if we become this development place, this place of bedroom community, which, with the TOD, would this be something that on the future, in a strategic plan, we should be looking toward?
Well, a strategic plan should certainly address that, but if you have development, you should have, I think, what you call connection fees, but they're really capacity fees. When somebody joins the system, they should make a payment to you to reimburse you for some of the capital costs you've incurred to make capacity for them in the wastewater system.
So for the Stratford Ave apartments, because you did the digging, and the Avalon, which has been asked by Mr. Yates in the back Did you see any connection fees that were charged to these large developments from our town in the recent?
There's a connection charge revenue line item. There has not been any funding in that for years, but we were told it was in the miscellaneous revenue. So I don't.
We were told that it's included in your miscellaneous revenue account. We haven't seen the details of that.
So you were given no transfer orders, though, signed by the finance director?
No, and we didn't ask for them either because I wasn't aware there was such a thing.
Okay.
But, I mean, if somebody joins your system, they should reimburse the people who've gone before for the cost of the facilities, a portion of the cost of the facilities, and that goes back to help pay off debt or, pay for replacement of facilities, things like that. And if you're going to have a lot of development, you sure want to have that fee in place so that when some developer comes, you can say, you want sewer service, you got 76 units at 76 times.
$3,500.
We do have that.
We do, but we're not using it.
I
That's
doubt
what he's
that
saying.
I also doubt that it's high enough to really cover the cost.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make sure that we put forward a request to find out where the Stratford Ave and the Avalon connection fees went.
Yeah.
Because if they can't find it and none of us can find it, somebody's got to know.
I'm not suggesting anything improper was done. We just didn't see any revenue related to that.
Now that you're talking about budget things, I just have a question about something that you noticed from all the way from year 2005 to current, and that was on contractual services. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so since the draft has been published, I received some additional information on what's actually in that contractual services. So some of it is actually public works overhead, so their management, things like that. That we think should probably be rolled into your cost allocation study as, the Public Works Department. Some other things are the Computil is who collects your water billing information, so you can charge your commercial customers on the basis of 100 cubic feet. Some of the other things were, of course, this 5-man crew. Any work they do for WPCA is charged back. For anything else? I'm trying to think what else is in there. I think there was Verizon bills, things like that. So there was I can give you that information. I just don't have it in my head.
We didn't get all that information until very recently, and it will be more detailed in the revised version of the report. But, I mean, there is a basis and a backup there is some piece of paper that backs up every one of those charges. Now, you may not agree with how that piece of paper was calculated, but there is a piece of paper backing it up.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we can move to the last topic here, financial plan and rate study findings on slide 11. So the first one is just talking about your capital improvement plan. Historically, it does not appear to be very specific or very project-driven. There seems to be only 3 line items in there. One was for some miscellaneous repairs, about $500,000 a year. You really want to be a little more detailed and specific than that going forward, so you have some sort of planning process. And the new superintendent has given us some more detailed information, so I think that's some good information you can roll into some future capital improvement plans.
Typically, a capital improvement program is a pretty detailed itemization that shows a list of projects and the year in which they're expected to be needed and a rough estimate of the cost of each of them. So in 2017, 18, 19, 20, going forward at least 5 years. And then you revise those numbers as you get better data, as the years get closer, or as you add new projects or drop projects you're not going to do. But it allows you to do some financial planning to help you figure out when you're going to need to borrow money or what you should finance from current revenues. And so you can plan when rates are going to have to go up, and you know ahead of time so you can give people warning. You don't really have a capital improvements plan. You have a couple of line items of categories of things. There should be, I mean, obviously if you're going to build a new wastewater treatment plant, I don't want to start that rumor, but I mean, you'd say, okay, we're going to have the design of the plant in 2 years, and we're going to let a contract for $7 million for that. We're going to have the construction, 3 years after that, and we're going to award a contract for $60 million or whatever it is. So you can plan ahead and see what your rates are going to need to be so that you can raise your rates gradually rather than all of a sudden having big rate increases.
I just want to say, in conjunction with that, with some of the major projects we've had, for instance, the 6 pumping stations. Our town engineer has really given us a plan on that. Good. However, I'd like to refer to your document about CIP, and I'm going to quote it because I think it's very, very important. It said, "It appears that most of the projects and funding amounts historically included in the CIP are not based on specific projects with well-engineered cost estimates, but merely plug-in figures to cover possible expenditures. We are concerned that a lack of specifics makes it impossible for auditors or citizens to question if the funds were spent for the purpose for which they were approved." And that's not just the WPCA. I agree with your report.
That gives you more accountability if you tell people, if you say to people, well, you should be warned that 3 years from now we're going to need to raise your rates 10%, you need to be able to tell them why. And you can say, well, our operating costs are going to go up 3% a year, but also we're going to do these capital projects, and we need, we're either going to need cash on hand or we're going to have to borrow money and pay principal and interest. So you need a coherent plan to summarize by year going forward what you think all your operating costs are going to be, what your debt service is going to be, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the capital improvement plan should be about a 5 to 10 year plan, and your capital budget would be the first 2 years of that. And then beyond that, we're recommending a master plan, which is maybe a 10 to 15 to 20 year lookout, so to kind of see what's on the horizon.
That's something we would do. That's something an engineering firm would do.
Okay.
And then beyond that, as we mentioned before, some sort of financial planning model that can be updated by, we would suggest probably somebody from finance, probably somebody from WPCA would both have training and access to this model, where you'd set rates for, a 5-year period, and if things change, you can come back and alter those. But that way you don't have to come and revisit the subject every year, but you'll have the finance staff kind of put in the actual numbers over the plan numbers and see, okay, how close were we to our projections? And it's just kind of a guiding tool to use for that.
Madam Chair, I have a question. We get that tool from you, correct?
Yeah, so we've built you a kind of a high-level rate study, and it's an Excel model we're going to give to you. When we talk about a cost of service analysis, it's more of a expanded where you might want to look at customers, usage, maybe go into peaking data and things like that. But
We're giving you a financial planning model now, but it's based on the kind of information you have now, which we think really needs to be more detailed and needs to be stretched out further into the future. We suggest you set rates for 5 years in advance. You can always change them if things change. But the reason you do that, you project out 10 years because you don't want to find out that in year 7 there's some horrible big expense coming and you're going to have to raise rates a whole lot.
Yeah. Alan?
Yes, Madam Chairman, is this, as the interim title has been now dropped from Mr. Hyde's job description, is this something that he could be and possibly should be putting together? This CIP plan and the plans that we're talking about?
That Mr. Hyde should be putting together?
Sure. I mean, are we, as a means of operation, are we going to go out and bring in consultants every time something needs to be undertaken?
Typically, it would
Probably
be
Mr.
done-
Hyde, but moreover, I think the town engineer has brought up various projects, I&I, and given us concrete expenses for it, and then also initiates requests for grants from the state for various amounts. So that's part of it.
Typically,
Yeah.
the CIP would be prepared under the superintendent's direction. You certainly have input into it, but if you've got town engineer, you certainly want to use the town engineer rather than going outside. And it's just not a matter of cost, it's a matter of keeping the institutional knowledge. You hire a consultant, the contract's over, the knowledge goes out the door.
That's correct, and that was kind of going to be my next point. I know that kind of the way our overall WPCA system is handled, it's basically kind of in two pieces. Tom kind of handles the plant, and then John Casey on the engineering side handles the piping and the pump stations and all the outer lying pieces. I just want to make sure that everything kind of starts getting put together, and that if we follow the consultants' reports and put these plans together, that they be kind of comprehensive in nature, and we move away from sort of this guess and plug-in strategy.
And I was going to say, lastly, your code states that you should have a cost of service study every 2 years. I think that's a bit too frequent, maybe every 4 to 5 years, but I guess it, yeah.
You haven't done it, but, I mean, we do rate studies, and that's way too frequent to do a rate study. I mean, if you want to waste your money doing it every 2 years, there's lots of people who'll be happy to do it. You should do one every 5 to 7 years, and you train your staff to use the financial model so they, as part of the budget process, can tell you what rate adjustments are needed every year. If you adopt this budget, the rates need to be this. And that's what the staff should be able to do with the model. But you don't use a consultant to do a cost of service study, but every 5 to 7 years, every 2 years is way over.
And you can do things like scenario analysis where you say, okay, what if we do 50% bond funding, 50% cash funding, or 100%? What does that do to the project cost, and then what does that do to the bills and the customer impact?
Madam Chair? One of the things that I would mention in that is, no, it would not be solely my responsibility. It would be a cooperative effort, which is what the contractual services is all about. It's part of that picture of the wealth of things that they do for us, that the town actually does, which is why we belong together, working together.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to say I found the quality of the study excellent, and I found it very informative, and it shows that we have so much work to do to bring not only the governance structure of the WPCA into line with what's done elsewhere, but also we have to have a strategic plan done. That had been off of my radar. And I think that you're right, when you have a town council that's also doing lots of other things, and they're doing WPCA, sometimes our attention can get diverted. But I do think that it's very important to have the strategic plan done probably first, I would imagine, and then the other plans done to go along with that strategic plan. But Madam Chair, I mean, this is an excellent study, and I agree with what's on the agenda here, which was to have a subcommittee formed. So I'd like to move resolution.
I would like to
Part
finish
5.
the reports first before we start.
I'm sorry, I thought they
No.
had finished the report.
And there may be some more questions about the report also. I have one about cash and cash equivalents, which was pretty shocking to me. Can you explain this proprietary fund, which went from 9.2 million? I'm assuming that was our WPCA money. And by 2013, it had gone down to $28,540. Did you get an explanation for that?
So, I mean, that's the way it's shown in the audited financials, whether we were given an explanation of pooled cash. I guess the general fund has a pooled cash. The way they're holding it is some pooled cash investments, so there's money there. I haven't seen exactly how much is in your operating reserve versus how much is in your capital, but I understand we're going to have to get some further explanation on what the actual current balance is.
It's not uncommon for a municipal government to take all the cash from everywhere and all the little pockets around the town, or sometimes big pockets, combine it because you get better investment rates and stuff like that. But then you need to make sure the money finds its way back to the pockets it came from to start with. And that's what we're still trying to document.
I think
again,
our
I don't wanna
pockets are
suggest-
empty.
I don't want to suggest that anything improper has happened. I haven't seen anything to suggest that.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Let's wait till they're finished with their report.
I thought they were.
Did you have more?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
are you through with your report, sir? Thank
We
you.
are. We are.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move item number 5 up to now, to take that up now.
Second.
Okay. The item is before you to form a subcommittee for members of the WPCA Board to review and evaluate the findings and recommendations of the Town of Stratford WPCA Evaluation Study, draft report dated February 2017, prepared by Municipal and Financial Services, and report to the full board regarding comments on draft report and proposed recommendations for implementing the recommendations of the draft report. It was seconded and made.
No, we were just moving the item forward.
You're amending the agenda.
We
to
were
move
amending
forward.
the agenda to move that item, to
Oh.
take that item up now.
Okay.
And there was a second for it.
Oh, okay. You just moved it forward. That was the item.
All those in favor?
All those in favor of moving forward?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, yes.
Time for discussion?
No,
Well, the resolution hasn't been made yet.
Madam Chair, I'd like to resolve that the chair of the I'd like to make a motion that the WPCA Board shall appoint a subcommittee from members of the WPCA Board and perhaps others to review and evaluate the findings and recommendations in the Town of Stratford WPCA Evaluation Study.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chairman.
Any? Made
Yeah.
and seconded?
Yeah, I think that's highly unusual. As we have seen in previous, with the chair of the council, subcommittees have been appointed by you.
Oh, that's
So she's the chair of this committee. She's been appointing subcommittees all along. Not to say I even want to be on it, but I think it's up to the chair to appoint that subcommittee based on what you want to do. I don't know why we would all have a say in that, and why we would change the composition of it.
My philosophy is anybody that wants to be on the subcommittee can be on the subcommittee.
Why are we appointing and
well.
picking?
Scott?
I was just say, with every commission and committee, it's always the chairperson that appoints the members, and to take that out of this resolution, I think would be just a disservice to our rules here with the WPCA and our board. I don't see why this would have to be voted on by the entire board to name people, because once the chair names, I believe you have to get an affirmative vote anyway from the entire committee.
Right. Greg?
Thank you, Chair. Gentlemen, you're going to have a final report?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, the ETA is weeks or months?
2 weeks, or plus or minus.
Okay, so that should be the report that this subcommittee evaluates, the quote, final report.
Right.
And secondly, Beth's idea of opening up this subcommittee, the chair should consider other interested members of the community as potential members of this review subcommittee.
I shall.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, we welcome any comments. If you want to collect them as the chair and then send them to us, then we can certainly take those into consideration for the draft.
Are there any other comments about the motion? As I understand the motion, it has changed the resolution that you see in front of you from the chair to the board, the whole WPCA board, and can include other members. I have no quarrel with including other members of the community up to a point. We don't want 100 people on the board, on the subcommittee. But so that's the motion in front of you, that the board shall appoint the subcommittee,
Well,
as I understand it.
we didn't officially amend the resolution, did we?
She made that motion, and it was seconded.
Madam Chairman,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chairman, I would just like your thoughts
My thoughts?
regarding the amendment. I mean,
I agree with Scott. Almost every chair that I know of any committee or authority appoints their subcommittees. And I'm perfectly open to people that are not necessarily on the board who, And I'm also opening it to, I'm not constricting it to 2 or 3 people. Anybody that wants to serve on it, fine. That's my personal opinion, and that was the way I would appoint.
Yeah,
Madam
Madam Chairman,
Chair.
that's been your practice in the past.
Madam Chair, I just want to point out that what we would be appointing shouldn't be a subcommittee because WPCA isn't a committee. This is the board itself. So this would be a committee of the WPCA board. Secondly, I have our list of committees here, and it's not the chair of the council that appoints those members. Members are nominated and then they're voted upon. And I do think that it's very important the results of this report are very important going forward. I mean, there are cost implications, there are structural implications, and I think that just appointing people quickly isn't necessarily the best strategy. I do think it should be perhaps like 7 people that consider this, a mixture of people on the town council and people not on the town council. They should be nominated and voted upon, just like we do for almost every single committee that we have.
Madam Chair. No, we don't, Beth.
Yes,
You have had subcommittees that you have personally appointed and that we're going to be talking about tonight.
I'm
so
sorry,
you do this as well. She has been fair, and
No.
Mr. Chase is correct. She has been fair all along. To take this away from her, because to take this idea away that you're going to be selective,
No,
when you
that's-
yourself are selective and exclusatory.
No, I'm sorry. I
okay.
cannot stand for
Inclusion's
that.
not your strength.
Okay.
Beth.
No.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Let us conduct ourselves a little
I will.
more mannerly.
But
All right.
Madam Chair.
All right. Let's,
No, she offended me. I have not appointed any subcommittees. I have not
Okay.
appointed any, I can't even think of
All right.
any committee
Beth.
I've appointed. These are voted upon. There are seats on committees we nominate them, and then we vote on them.
all right. Well,
We
could
haven't
we
even
just
created the
discuss
structure
your
of
point
the-
and then vote, please? All right. Her point was to have the whole board appoint a committee. I believe that's what it was. And there was a second. Any more comments? No. All those in favor of Beth?
Roll call.
Roll call. Beth?
Motion to table. Motion to table this until we figure out what the structure of this committee is and...
Motion to table until she gets her way.
No?
There's no second.
Okay, there's
All
no
right.
second.
Continue with the roll call. On Beth?
Okay, yes.
No.
Yes. No.
No.
No. All right. Did not carry. Let's consider the resolution that's there already, since we said we were going to take this out of order, that I would appoint a subcommittee from members of the WPCA board, and I said I would be open to people in town who would be interested. Is there anyone who
Madam
would...
Chairman?
Yes.
I would make a motion to adopt the resolution number 5 with one amendment, and that is and I'll read it, the chair of the WPCA shall appoint a committee from members of the WPCA board to review and evaluate the findings of the recommendations, et cetera. The change being substitute
Take out sub.
committee to substitute committee for subcommittee.
Second.
Yes.
Offer one other amendment. It's minor, not draft report
Well,
dated February.
let's take them one at a time. Madam Chairman, would you care to call for a vote?
Was there any discussion on just having a committee, okay, to go over this? But I know where you're going. Yes. Any more discussion? All right. All those in favor?
The amendment, yeah.
Any opposed? Okay. So we're going to have a committee.
Your turn.
which I shall appoint.
Madam Chair, offer a second amendment to remove the word draft report dated February 17 to final report expected March of 17.
Second.
Okay. Take out draft,
And it's,
change February to March. Got it.
and draft is in 3 different places in the
Yes,
paragraph.
I see it. I crossed out 2.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I think that instead of an amendment, can you amend something that's already passed?
No, what we passed was my amendment.
Oh. Okay.
Do we vote on
Any
the second?
comment on the removal of draft and addition of March instead of February, which would be the report, will be the final report issued in March to work with? Any discussion? All those in favor of
Aye.
Mr. Khan's?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now
Madam Chair.
I'm totally lost. We're,
Madam Chair, we've completed number 5, item 5. We've passed that resolution with
No,
the
we
2
didn't.
amendments.
No,
We just passed it.
we passed the
Madam
2
Chairman,
amendments, but we haven't passed the resolution
Madam
yet.
Chairman, I
Then-
move the question as amended.
Second.
that would take care of the whole thing.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, he moves the question as amended, both his amendment and your amendment. Okay. All those in favor? Is there any
Aye.
discussion? Wait a minute.
Discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Okay.
Madam,
I want to, yes.
before we move on to the remaining item number 4, well, then there's also a 6. Mr. Donahue and his partner, just to quickly ask them that in their final draft, if they could just remember the request to do a timeline with maybe a sense of priority over which items can be discrete and done quickly versus which ones may require further, longer.
Absolutely, if that's the authority's pleasure, we will do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I have a report from Tom Hyde, and he has given us all a copy of it, and also a report from Mr. Casey. And one of the things Mr. Casey is asking is, if you will notice his memorandum, that we obtain some Clean Water Fund grant from the state. And that requires us to send a resolution to the town council. Do you want to mention that, John?
You just did, that's it, the council.
I didn't read it for you.
The resolution is to have the mayor sign the grant paperwork and the town clerk to certify it.
Okay.
So if you just forward it to the council.
I have a question for you, John, though. Do we, as the WPCA, have to say we're going to forward the resolution to the town council?
I think you just forwarded this with a favorable recommendation to the council.
I'm sorry, what?
You would forward this with a favorable recommendation to the council.
Okay, do we have a favorable recommendation?
Madam Chairman, I would move that the resolution to obtain the Clean Water Fund financing for inflow and infiltration grant be approved and forwarded to the town council.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will meet it again in 2 weeks. Okay, thank you, John.
What about the pump stations?
Oh, John also did mention that he has notified DEEP of our selection of tie and bond and our intention to apply for clean water funds. That was just a notification. Thank you, John. Okay. The last item is an appeal regarding building located at 55 Washington Parkway.
Madam Chairman, can we get the superintendent's report, or are we just going to read it on our own?
Oh, no, he gave us a written report. Everybody has it. I was trying to We have another meeting after this. I was trying to go a little faster. Alex,
Motion to accept the superintendent's report?
Second.
what?
Motion to accept the superintendent's report as written.
Okay, second.
Second.
Gave everybody a copy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to 55 Washington Parkway. Alex, did you have a comment?
I was just going to ask that the board table that for this month. John Casey's working to see if this property is in fact connected to the sewer system right now, and that would probably prove dispositive in this appeal.
Motion to table.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.